In at number 10, Thanos and the Thing. The saying, "the enemy of my enemy is my friend," rings ever so true when it comes to the odd pairing of Thanos and the Thing. Ben Grimm has been part of the Fantastic Four for a long time and is well aware of the horrible villains that exist throughout the Marvel Universe. As a result of his space explorations with the Fantastic Four, he's come into contact with Thanos on a number of occasions. Recognizing just how dangerous the Mad Titan is, the Fantastic Four have shut down a number of evil plans Thanos had up his big gold glove. However, during the Secret Wars timeline, the narrative between the Thing and Thanos kinda changed. At the start, Ben Grimm was acting as the vast wall to protect the God Emperor Doom and was in charge of keeping out the people who sought to overthrow him. However, in comes Thanos, who took a different approach to breaching the wall. Instead, he leveled with the Thing and helped him escape this boring service of just acting like a wall. Thanos reminded Ben that the world was not right and that it needed him. Whether or not these words came with ill intentions, it was still a superhero supervillain team up against Dr. Doom that you wouldn't believe would ever exist. In at number 9, Dracula and the X-Men. The X-Men and Dracula have gone head to head on a number of occasions in the past. The Lord of Vampires even attempted to force Storm into marrying him. Gross. Although after some time it turned out they hated his son. You see, his son was planning a much more evil takeover than anything his father had ever attempted. Seeking to take his father's spot as the top vampire supervillain, he engineered this biological weapon. The weapon's purpose was to turn regular civilians into bloodthirsty vampires. In a surprising turn of events though, the X-Men, Dracula, and even Blade joined forces in order to restore order to the world. Although he was able to turn Jubilee right before they could defeat him, Dracula did give her an amulet that would combat this new fear of sunlight. Consider it a gift of appreciation to the X-Men. Still an unlikely team up. In at number 8, Nova and Carnage. During the event known as Axis, the Uncanny Avengers were attempting to stop the Red Skull who had stolen Charles Xavier's brain. I know, gross, right? In comes Magneto, who demolishes the villain, but accidentally unlocks this psionic energy within him that releases Onslaught into the universe. Now with Onslaught being the Uncanny Avengers' biggest threat, the Scarlet Witch decided to reverse the alignments of the heroes and villains. Carnage just happened to be amongst them when this went down, so in a strange turn of events, Carnage actually started to befriend Nova. Although this odd team up only lasted for a moment and purely out of circumstance, they were working together. Eventually the spell was reversed though, and Carnage went back to his usual crazy self.
Number 7. Alice. Alice and Kate Kane have a complicated relationship. I mean, considering, they're sisters. While the show Batwoman isn't perfect, one of the best things about it is the dynamic between Kate and Alice, and that was especially true when they were forced to work together in Season 1, Episode 16, titled Through the Looking Glass. Kate is forced to work with Alice to break Mouse out of Arkham Asylum. Seeing the two of them work together and break into Arkham was very cool, and seeing how their distinct styles clashed. I mean, Kate made sure that Alice wouldn't kill anyone, which Alice usually likes to do. Of course, it ends with Kate double-crossing her, but hey, it was still cool to see it while it lasted, and that dynamic is something fans are really gonna miss since Kate is no longer going to be in the show in Season 2.
In at number 3, Super Skrull and Nova. This is a true tale of how just one team up could alter a character's whole reality. See, Super Skrull had been on the receiving end of mockery by his people for a long time after failing to take down the Fantastic Four. However, during the events of Annihilation, he put this behind him in order to protect his people not just from the Annihilation Wave, but soon Ultron as well. Super Skrull could not have done this alone though. Teaming up with Nova and his team of cosmic heroes, Super Skrull was finally able to redeem himself. With the help of Nova, he was able to return to his home, but this time he was praised for his efforts. They even made him a representative for intergalactic affairs. In at number 2, Doctor Doom and Doctor Strange. Sounds like a reality show. Right before Secret Wars, the majority of the Marvel multiverse was just beginning to collapse. Each unique world began crashing into one another, leaving almost nothing left. This catastrophic problem would require the universe's greatest minds to set aside their differences and combine their efforts in order to save, well, everything and everyone. The two people we're speaking about is Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom, along with some help by Molecule Man of course. The Beyonders happen to be the cause of all of these issues, so both men decided the only way was to steal their power. Eventually they succeeded, but this also enacted the new reign of the God Emperor Doom, who put Doctor Strange as kind of his right-hand man, making Strange essentially a sheriff that would uphold Doom's new laws. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, ANNIHILUS and the Avengers. As we reach the end of this list, it's funny to look at how some of these villains go from such evil plots to becoming key players in assisting the superheroes. ANNIHILUS is one of those stories. Once known as the largest threat in the Marvel Universe, he used his cosmic control rod combined with his annihilation wave to leave nothing but total destruction throughout the cosmos. Eventually Nova and his alliance was able to put a stop to this madness, but ANNIHILUS would soon return. However, this time he was in the form of a larvae which would regrow into his previous self. Soon enough though, ANNIHILUS was now part of the Intergalactic Councils during the events of Infinity. This was the largest council of nations across space and even included the Avengers. At the time, the Avengers' main focus was attempting to stop the Builders from wiping out the universe, and as part of his new role, ANNIHILUS lended a hand.
Number 10, the Wizard and Trapster. These two would go on to become important founding members of the Frightful Four villain team, but even before that, they were teaming up together. Way back when Trapster was known simply as Pastepot Pete, these two worked together in Strange Tales in an effort to defame and defeat the Human Torch, Johnny Storm. In the end, the Torch escaped their trap and apprehended both of them, turning them in, but still, for two C or D-list villains, they came pretty close to killing the Fantastic Four hero, using Pete's pace and an airtight room that was quickly being drained of its oxygen. Also, I don't know if the Wizard's actually a C-list villain. I might actually bump him up. Also, Pastepot Pete is hard to say if you say it like 3 times fast. Number 9, Crime Syndicate. As much as I love the Crime Syndicate and think that they are an awesome team of villains, they are also pretty dysfunctional, which is why they are ranked so low on our list. However, despite the fact that they are often depicted as being at one another's throats and sneaking behind one another's backs in order to basically make sure that they themselves come out on top with the most power, they still manage to have an impressive amount of horrendous achievements, or almost achievements at least. The Crime Syndicate is still a supervillain team that proves to be extremely dangerous whenever our heroes come up against them, though they would probably be more frightening to face if they could do a little bit better at actually working together like a team instead of constantly double-crossing one another. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and comment below if you want to help us out here at the channel. I promise you it does really help, and we appreciate all your likes and comments. Thank you. Number 8, Daredevil Revenge Squad. Not the official name for this team, I don't think. This team was Typhoid Mary's group of villains. She recruited them to help her get revenge on Daredevil, and they all also had their own motives for doing him harm. All villains who had basically been slighted by the Red Devil themselves in the past. What's more, although this team up only lasted a few issues, it was actually brutally successful, with Typhoid Mary even using her Mary persona at the end of Daredevil issue 259 to kind of ensnare Matt Murdock into like letting his guard down around her. Typhoid Mary recruited the Wild Boys, Ammo, Bullet, and Bushwhacker to help her get the deed done, but insisted on taking the final moment of defeat for herself. Also, is it just me, or does Typhoid Mary look huge in this issue? She looks like so tall. I'm just like, wow, what's happening? I don't hate it.
Number 7, Circus of Crime. Fritz Tybalt, then manager and ringmaster of a small Austrian circus, became active in the Axis powers during World War II. He was asked by German intelligence to take his circus to the United States of America to give performances in major cities while actually using his circus members' powers and talents in order to take out government officials. Fritz Tybalt's evil circus of crime consisted of Omir the Snake Charmer, Tommy Thumb, the Trapeze Trio, and Zandow the Strongman. However, Tybalt, who came to be known as the Ringmaster of Death, was captured by Captain America. But fast forward, and the Circus of Crime's new MO was giving a performance to a large audience. Then the Ringmaster would use the powerful mind control device in his hat to put the audience into a trance. The circus members then robbed the audience, who would remember nothing about the thefts when the Ringmaster released them from the trance, and the performance continued. This criminal circus fought the Hulk, Spider-Man, the Hawkeyes, the Avengers, and others. Number 6, the UFOs. These villains and their cleverly chosen team names. UFOs, like UFOs, because they got their powers in space. Yes, of course. Someone get me out of here, please. Okay, the UFOs here, inspired by the powers gained by the Fantastic Four, went to great lengths trying to reproduce the same accident that gave those heroes their abilities. The attempt succeeded, but they were interrupted by Bruce Banner, who discovered their ground control facility and was able to bring the shuttle down, because he thought it had been exposed to the cosmic radiation by accident. They were none too happy, as they thought they could have been made even stronger if he had not interfered, and they displayed their newfound powers in a frankly pretty awesome fight with the Incredible Hulk, even if they lost. Vapor has the ability to alter her form into any known gas. Vector gained the power of telekinesis from cosmic rays. X-Ray has been permanently transformed into a living energy field with the power to expel forms of heavy radiation capable of hurting even the Hulk. Ironclad has been permanently transformed into organic metal steel. He has superhuman strength, durability, and the ability to decrease or increase his own weight. His fight with the Hulk literally shook the universe, which is super cool. You should probably check him out. Number 5, the Frightful Four. A second group inspired by the Fantastic Four. Yes, the Frightful Four also did not come up with a very clever name. The Wizard, the Sandman, and Paste Pot Pete, who all regularly did battle with the Human Torch and were defeated by him around the same time, realized that they all had unique powers and a mutual disdain for the Fantastic Four. The Wizard suggested that they form a group that would be the evil counterparts to the Fantastic Four. A great idea! But it's just 3 dudes. They need a 4th member to their group, and what do you know, the Wizard had heard of a strange woman hiding out on a remote island on the Mediterranean who had complete control of her hair. Traveling there, the Wizard convinced Madame Medusa to join their ranks. Now this Madame Medusa was actually Medusa of the Inhumans, as some of you may have guessed, but she was kept under the influence of the Wizard using a device that kept her memories forgotten to her. They made their first attack at Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman's engagement party, which is kinda just rude if you ask me. Number 4, Wrecking Crew. When Dirk Garthwaite, otherwise known as Wrecker, held onto his enchanted crowbar, he invited his 3 chums, ex-physicist Dr. Elliot Franklin, ex-Army Master Sergeant Henry Camp, and ex-farmhand Brian Kalusky to come and do the same in the middle of a thunderstorm. When lightning struck the crowbar, all 3 men were empowered, becoming Thunderball, Bulldozer, and Piledriver respectively, and coming together to be the villainous Wrecking Crew. These mystical strongmen were mainly an enemy to Thor, but they originally fought against the Defenders. This group has actually been around for a pretty long time and have battled many a superhero. The Fantastic Four, Avengers, Omega Flight, Spider-Man, the Thunderbolts, and even got into a fight between the Marvel and DC universes.
Number 3, Lex Luthor and Brainiac. They were almost a complete success even in their very first team-up. Almost. Together, Lex Luthor and Brainiac appeared in issue 167 of Superman, where they teamed up in a 3-part story to take down their joint foe. Their brilliance and technological know-how combined allowed them to both shrink and depower Superman, but unfortunately for them, Superman would not stand by and let himself be so easily defeated, or so well defeated, because I think that's a pretty good plan. And he found a way to escape their wrath. They honestly should have just squashed him when they had a chance, but hey, then we wouldn't have any more stories. Lex and Brainiac together, in fact, are such a fan favorite. We've even seen them in the most intense kind of team up in the DC animated universe when they merged both their minds and bodies together into one being. You know your partnership is intense when you're just let's just join and be one being, but also terrifying. I don't want to fight. Lex and Brainiac merged together. Number 2, Masters of Evil. Another very iconic and successful group of supervillains who have teamed up together. This roster has also changed dramatically over the years when it comes to their members, and despite the fact that they have some members who are less popular when it comes to their notoriety, this seems to be a team that generally has some measure of success when it comes to their evil plots. The team has consisted of such members as Moonstone, Radioactive Man, Tiger Shark, Titania, and Absorbing Man, with any of the Zemos usually being seen as the most successful leaders of the team to date. But they've also had a lot of different leaders. To date, we've seen multiple incarnations of the team, and we're actually likely in, or at least approaching, the double digits, I think, at this point, when it comes to all the different rosters that we've seen. Number 1, Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. Yeah, so if you know me, you may have already guessed that they'd be at my top, but yeah, I love Poison Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. Never mind being, I think, some of the best supervillain team-ups out there. It's just two amazing characters. You give me two amazing villains together, I'm gonna say that it worked well. These two work together in a way that almost allows them to move from the side of villain to hero. In fact, over the last few years, as we've seen their characters develop together, they have both become more and more heroic. Though Ivy is now, of course, kind of headed back in the direction of straight up villain, currently in the comics, after her and Harley's relationship kind of fell apart in the aftermath of Heroes in Crisis. Still, for the most part, these two have brought out a lot of the best in each other, and have also managed to pull off some pretty impressive schemes along the way. I don't know whether making each other better and bringing out the hero in each other means that these two should be considered a great or an awful supervillain team up, but I personally like to see that as a win, even if it doesn't align with the villainous focus of this list. Any partnership where you bring out the best in someone, for good or for evil, should be considered one of the greatest in my books, because you know, that's what partnerships and or relationships are all about.
Number 10. Catwoman. Okay, so let me start off by saying, I know Catwoman isn't always a straight up supervillain. She has played both sides, but, you know, overall she sometimes is considered a villain, and so, you know, it's always interesting to see her and Batman whenever they decide to team up and put whatever differences they had aside and work together to stop a common threat. Of course, this relationship ended up turning into something much, much more, and the two of them even almost got married. Number 9. Ocean Master. This one was very brief, but still pretty interesting, and I wonder if it'll be something that will ever be explored more on screen once Aquaman 2 ever comes out to theaters. But in the comics, Arthur and his half-brother were forced to work together to stop someone called the Scavenger. He was looking for a device that would grant him immortality, but in the process, it destroys the ocean. So in order to stop that, Aquaman and Ocean Master join forces to stop the Scavenger. And they do. But after it was all done, Ocean Master vowed to destroy Aquaman once and for all. Brotherly love. You gotta love it, am I right? Number 8. Harry Osborn. Now, Spider-Man 3 doesn't have the greatest reputation, and it's by no means a perfect film. Everyone knows that. But it still did have some cool scenes scattered throughout. And one of them was when Peter and Harry put aside their differences and worked together to take down Sandman and Venom. Seeing the best friends turned enemies work together one last time was a good way to really end their story arc. Their relationship was one of the best things about the trilogy, so fans were really happy to see it end in a satisfying way. And of course, good thing the two of them did work out their differences, because Harry was unfortunately killed during that battle after being stabbed by Venom.
Number 7. Suicide Squad Black. This version of the team is still from Prime Earth, but features a new roster of villains / anti-heroes, combined with some familiar faces. The team was once again led by Amanda Waller and featured characters that she forced into action, like the main squad. The members throughout consisted of El Diablo, Azucar, Gentleman Ghost, Juniper, Tiamat, Wither, Clarion the Witch Boy, and Enchantress. A lot of mystical and magical characters on this team. This alternate version of the team referred to themselves as Suicide Squad Black, and appeared in their own limited series titled Suicide Squad Black Files. Number 6. David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Ayer's version of the Suicide Squad in the DCEU featured many familiar and recurring faces when it comes to the squad's members. Led by Amanda Waller, the team featured Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Enchantress, El Diablo, Captain Boomerang, and Katana. Not only was the film dark when it came to exploring the origins of many of these characters, their struggles, and all they had suffered through to become the villains they were today, but it was also dark because of the fact that Enchantress almost succeeded in kind of taking over the world. In the end, the Suicide Squad did manage to save the day, but had to eliminate Enchantress and the innocent June Moon, whom she possesses. Number 5. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Gunn's The Suicide Squad will actually be a soft reboot of the former team. His team and his feel of the Suicide Squad will likely be a lot different than Ayer's, although it still seems to have plenty of that Suicide Squad chaos that most fans enjoy. This time around, the team has a lot more members, reminding us once again of why exactly the team is referred to as the Suicide Squad, despite having the official government name of Task Force X. Because at any point, anyone can die. This team is sent on only the toughest missions, referred to as suicide missions, because for many they would be considered impossible. You can expect there will be more violence, explosions, and deaths in comparison to the first film. Considering that many of the members of the squad won't make it out alive, this film is likely to be a much darker take on the Suicide Squad when it comes to cinematics. Currently, the team roster includes Harley Quinn, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, The Thinker, Captain Boomerang, Blackguard, Polka Dot Man, Savant, King Shark, Weasel, Javelin, Ratcatcher 2, Soul Soria, TDK, and Mongol. Woo! With likely even more surprise members awaiting to be revealed throughout the duration of the film. Number 4. Telltale Games. In the Telltale Batman game, the Suicide Squad turn up once more, but this version of Amanda Waller's team is different when it comes to their roster. In the Telltale episode The Enemy Within, we learn that both Bane and Harley are on the team, and in a shocking twist, it's revealed that Catwoman is also part of the Suicide Squad. What? Which Waller is also using to apply pressure to Batman, which is pretty dark if you yourself are playing as the Dark Knight. And of course here, at this part, you are. Catwoman expresses of course that she did not join the team willingly and tries to warn Batman, but is shocked by Waller's collar before she can finish her sentence. Oh, and Amanda Waller also seems to want Batman to submit and also join her team. Pretty nuts.
Number 3. Kingpin. In one of Daredevil's greatest stories, Matt Murdock is sent to prison and everyone knows he is Daredevil. So, he is in prison with all of his greatest enemies. During the comic, titled The Devil Inside and Out, Matt is forced to work with Wilson Fisk in order to survive, and the result is a very entertaining series. It was one of the first times we really saw a hero get put into this position, like in prison and everyone knows who he is. It was entertaining, and to be honest, I was really hoping to see this adapted in the Daredevil TV show one day, because it would have been so freaking cool to see that version of Daredevil and that version of Kingpin work together in prison. But now, that will probably never happen. Still, pick up the comic if you haven't already, it's a really good read. Number 2. The whole DC multiverse. During the comic Crisis on Infinite Earths, basically every hero and villain were forced to work together in order to save the multiverse and stop the Anti-Monitor. Because, I mean, they didn't really have much of a choice, because there wouldn't really be a world for them to save or destroy, so they were forced to work together. It was a once-in-a-lifetime event, and it was really cool to see. Number 1, Deathstroke. Deathstroke has, he's teamed up with people before, but I am going to talk about the time when he did it in Arrow Season 5. In that season, Slade was locked up in a prison on Lienyu, and Oliver goes to him for help to take on Prometheus and his team. It was a truly epic moment, because a lot of fans never thought we would ever see Slade return to the show because of the restrictions DC puts on it. Oliver and Slade used to be friends. I mean, Slade trained him. But then Shadow died and Slade went crazy with Mirakuru, so their relationship took a turn. But it was so cool to see them reunite and team up together again on the same island where they first met and trained together. It felt like everything came full circle. The Arrow Season 5 finale is seriously one of the best episodes the show has ever done. And seeing Oliver and Slade team up made it even better. I still just get chills thinking about it.
Starting us off in at number 10, Spider-Man and Satana. This team-up occurred in a Marvel team-up comic. We're talking Marvel Team-Up issue 81 from 1979. We're talking Marvel Team-Up issue 81 from 1979. It saw Peter Parker's web-slinger teaming up with the daughter of Satan, Satana. Creative name there, Satan. Not self-involved whatsoever. Anywho, this story, titled Last Rites, Doctor Strange finds himself manipulated by the Shiatra Book of the Damned, causing him to become an agent of Basilisk, turning him into a werewolf. Spider-Man has to track him down, and Satana gets involved, with her mission being to restore Doctor Strange's soul to normal or kill him as a last resort if she fails. By the end of the team-up, Satana is faced with a choice to either save her own life or save Strange's soul, and she ends up going with the Doctor's, which actually went over pretty well with fans because she wasn't a super overly popular character. And at number 9, the Micronauts and Baron Karza. This one is kind of weird. It's a team up between the Micronauts and Baron Karza. Karza is kind of like a cross between an evil knight, Darth Vader, and a sad Doctor Doom impersonator. He's the former royal chief scientist of Homeworld, who used his technology to overthrow the monarchy of Homeworld, taking control of a large chunk of the Microverse before his archenemies, the Micronauts, defeated him. Here we see an instance where they were on the same side though. And their foe? Professor Charles Xavier. The team-up took place during the X-Men Micronauts crossover series, with the unlikely coupling leading Karza's fleet against a seemingly all-powerful entity. Turns out that this mysterious entity's power is traced to Charles Xavier. Spoiler alert, it's his dark side. And when they track him down at the X-Mansion, eventually this entity turns the mutants against the Micronauts, apparently kills a bunch of people, and Kitty Pryde and Karza sort of accidentally switch bodies. Things get weirder and devolve into the entity trying to rape Kitty, who is actually Karza, and this evil Xavier entity gets pervy with Danielle Moonstar to the point where he's actually psychically fondling her. Like, not even joking. The story ends with Xavier being the one who kills off the entity, although claims that the darkness inside of each of us is never fully gone, even when defeated. Ooh. Can we just talk about how an aspect of Xavier's personality just got real evil and pervy, and everyone was like totally cool with that, with him being like, I fixed it, don't worry guys, but it's still there deep down. Like, how are the X-Men not being like, yo, this is kind of Moving on to number 8, Dr. Doom and Namor. Namor, despite having quite antagonistic qualities, definitely qualifies as an anti-hero. So it should be no surprise that he was the hero side of this very first team-up in Marvel's Supervillain Team-Up Volume 1, Issue 1. The story starts with Namor getting huffy and calling off their alliance, and then Doom moping around about it and being all like, I don't need a lackey, I need a friend. So he decides that he's going to try to recruit Namor one more time to convince him otherwise, but he's super sketch about it. He ends up using a tracking device disguised as a fish to follow Namor, because that's totally a way to rebuild the trust of an ally who just abandoned you. Despite this, they team up again and all is going fine and dandy until Namor witnesses Doom executing one of Atoma's defenseless lackeys in Supervillain Team-Up Issue 3, causing the two of them to get into a big brawl in Supervillain Team-Up Issue 4. Sometimes you just gotta reel it in a bit, Victor. Come on, dude. Just take a step back. Don't be weird about it.
Number 7, Gotham City Sirens. Definitely one of the hottest supervillain team-ups out there in my opinion. Gotham City Sirens isn't just awesome because it's a team of powerful villains, but because it also cemented a fantastic friendship between the 3 main team members that we can always go back to, and I kinda love that. The Gotham City Sirens are Catwoman, Poison Ivy, and Harley Quinn, who sometimes also have other allies who join them in their villainous adventures. And also, let's be honest, heroic adventures, such as the Carpenter, Jenna Duffy, formerly part of the Wonderland gang. While this team-up is one made up of criminals, the team of powerhouses also brought a lot of good out in each other and ended up actually performing a lot of heroic missions together despite their villainous pasts. So this might be a team-up of villains, but it's also kind of a hero team in a weird way, kind of like doing a little bit of both, which I love. Number 6, Sinister Six. I didn't realize that I made the Sinister Six number 6. I just did that. That was not intentional. I'll take it, but it was not intentional, just so y'all know. While the Sinister Six definitely have their setbacks as a team, there is a reason why they are one of the favorites when it comes to supervillain groups and team-ups. I'm still waiting for them in the MCU. Please, please Marvel, give them to me. With the combined strength and skills of these villains, it seems that no scheme is outside of their reach. In reality though, they usually end up in a competition to prove who is the better, which ends with them betraying one another, usually costing them their victories. But this team has still come close to defeating Spider-Man on multiple occasions, and despite their setbacks, they are a team that you can always rely on to find their way back to one another, even if it means sometimes recruiting some new members to their ranks in the process. Also, I'm all for new members being included to the ranks. There's so many good Spider-Man villains, why limit ourselves? Give me the Sinister 60. Number 5, Dr. Psycho and Riddler and Parademons. Dr. Psycho ends up allying himself with the Riddler in the Harley Quinn animated series. Originally, it's Harley who wants to team up with Darkseid with her gang, but in the end, she ends up surrendering her army of parademons that Darkseid supplied her with after realizing she's really doing all of this, conquering Earth to try and escape her romantic feelings for Poison Ivy, who is about to get married to Kite Man at this point in the series. Yikes, awkward. Dr. Psycho ends up becoming the big bad of the latest season in the end, with Riddler becoming his partner in crime and wielding great control over the leftover parademon army on Earth, which he has no qualms about using, unlike Harley, who's like, yeah, maybe I'm going a little too far. But yeah, Psycho's into it. A little too into it. Very much too into it. Number 4, Juggernaut and Black Tom Cassidy. These two aren't just great villains when it comes to their working relationship, they were also like fast friends. And kind of best friends? I love it. Black Tom and Juggernaut have been good friends and allies since Black Tom's first full appearance in the comics in Uncanny X-Men issue 101. And I know what you guys are thinking. You're thinking, oh, but Amanda, that wasn't Black Tom's first appearance, but it was his first full appearance. So I believe his first cameo appearance was like issue 99, but don't quote me on that. Only a few issues later, they were already proving themselves to be a deadly duo as they teamed up to successfully kidnap and torment the X-Men in the hopes that this would inspire Professor Xavier to offer his own life up in exchange for his students' freedom. Unfortunately, they ended up getting tricked by Nightcrawler and ultimately were defeated. But still, this was a pretty good attempt to defeat the X-Men and Charles Xavier. Juggy's never gonna get over that. Or well, actually, yeah, he'll probably never get over it. I stand by what I said. It's gotta be hard for Juggernaut right now. Like, all of the mutants are off in Krakoa and he's not a mutant. It's challenging.
Moving on to number 3, Avengers and Kang the Conqueror. This team up is slightly different than the others on our list. It involves trying to resurrect a character via a team up and then trying to kill one half of said team up unsuccessfully. Once upon a time, Kang the Conqueror teamed up with Earth's mightiest heroes and it resulted in the death of the woman he loved. Or rather, she kinda just remained dead because they had previously kind of been responsible for her death and he was really sore about it, sort of. So in the Avengers issue 69, Kang goes to the Avengers and informs them that the Grandmaster has put him in a precarious position. If the Avengers can defeat the Grandmaster's champions, the Squadron Sinister, he'll give Kang the power of life over death to resurrect Ravonna, Kang's love. Now for context, Ravonna was killed off prior when the Avengers and Kang clashed, having sacrificed herself in order to prevent Kang from being killed by a traitor. Now in this story, the Avengers won, but Kang gets foolish and uses his power to try to kill the Avengers instead and fails to do so, meaning he just kinda has to relive the pain of his love being dead again because he failed and it's his fault she's not alive this time. It's all very sad. And at number 2, Charles Xavier and Magneto in Dawn of X. Here's a case in which a team up effectively led to the fate of a character being worse than death. The new Dawn of X reboot of the X-Men franchise now sees Charles Xavier and his X-Men having had enough. They're done relying on the hope that humanity can learn to accept mutant kind, done with the oppression that they've dealt with for decades. Xavier ends up teaming up with Magneto, with the two of them primarily calling the shots with the new mutant sovereign nation that exists on Krakoa. This new sovereign state demands that mutants who have committed crimes are accountable by their mutant laws versus human laws out in the regular world, with one of these mutant laws being that they do not kill other mutants. Enter Sabretooth, who has been up to no good and is apprehended by the Fantastic Four outside of Krakoa. Cyclops shows up to take him to Krakoa for the mutants there to be the ones to decide his punishment. When Cyclops takes him over there, Xavier exiles Sabretooth, sending him into what he calls a stasis, deep inside of Krakoa. The ground opened up and Creed was dropped into it. Xavier claims that he'll be in there forever. I quote, "because that is how long mutant justice lasts." While he does note that Sabretooth might one day have the option to redeem himself, his fate is worse than any prison or death. To forever fall through the dark depths of a sentient creature for all of eternity? Yeah, yikes. That's like kinda savage, Xavier. You tolerate that, but you don't tolerate prisons? And finally, in at number 1, everybody during Crisis on Infinite Earths. Crisis on Infinite Earths is one of the most prominent crossovers in DC history, and an impactful one to boot. Essentially, the purpose of this crossover was to reboot the DC multiverse and create a single unified DC universe. The story itself involved everyone in DC's roster, for the most part, getting involved to prevent the Anti-Monitor from completely destroying the multiverse. The Monitor, his good counterpart, tries to recruit heroes from across the multiverse to help, but is murdered. And then Brainiac tries to take advantage of the situation, but ultimately, in the end, all of the heroes and all of the villains are brought together by the Spectre to work together. Crisis is known for its surprisingly high death toll, killing off the likes of heroes such as Kara Zor-El and Barry Allen, along with hundreds of other lives that were lost in the process before Anti-Monitor was defeated.
But coming in at number 10 is Hydra. To call Hydra a team isn't exactly a full truth. This organization is and has been comprised of not just notable villains like the Red Skull, Baron von Strucker, Gorgon, Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, Viper, Arnim Zola, Baron Helmut Zemo, Kingpin, Taskmaster, Absorbing Man, Bullseye, Crossbones, and many others, but there are also countless nameless henchmen and agents who all spout Hail Hydra. A notable mention going to Bob from the Deadpool comics. You're a good guy. As one of the commenters on part 1 made note of, Hydra isn't so powerful in the sense that they can absolutely obliterate foes, but they have something a lot of villains seem to lack: patience. The slow burn is their bread and butter, with slowly enacted plans that eventually lead them to almost secure world domination. Characters like Thor could punch as many dudes as he wants, but it's the members of Hydra who we don't even know about that are the real problem. What is actually insane to me is that Hydra has actually been around since pre-human time. It was a group of cold-blooded reptile-like aliens that planted the seeds that would eventually give rise to Hydra, with our earliest records of Hydra dating back to 3rd Dynasty Egypt. And at number 9, the Marauders. I think that a lot of mutant villain teams can give the Avengers a headache. As a commenter said in the last video, there is a reason that villains like Magneto and Apocalypse say that mutants are the superior species. Well, one of the cooler mutant villain groups out there, in my humble opinion, would be the Marauders. Originally, the Marauders were a group of mutant mercenaries working for the villain Mr. Sinister. They were formed by Gambit in order to eradicate the population of physically undesirable mutants known as the Morlocks. To accomplish this task, Gambit called in Sabretooth, Arclight, Harpoon, Malice, Scalp Hunter, Scrambler, Vertigo, Riptide, Blockbuster, and Prism. The team has also been led by Magneto, Grey Crow, and Mystique at different points in time, and has also had villains like Ares, Chimera, Omega Sentinel, Polaris, Sunfire, and other unnamed soldiers. And as you might have guessed from Mr. Sinister's involvement, there have also been clones of these characters on the team as well. This group of mercenaries may not seem like the most powerful, but with such ruthless and unforgiving characters, they could easily do some damage to the Avengers. On a side note, if I hear someone bring up Rune King Thor again as if he was ever on the Avengers team with all that power, I want to lose it. He was around for like 5 minutes and it was to stop Ragnarok and then he just went away. In at number 8 is the HELLFIRE Club. Similar to Hydra, again, the HELLFIRE Club are not exactly a team, but kind of. And also like Hydra, they play a much more subtle game in terms of their villainous ways. The HELLFIRE Club has been around since the 1700s, beginning as a British social elite club that would provide luxuries to its members that were not exactly legal or not exactly morally upstanding. But they had a secondary goal of putting together their financial wealth and political power to influence the world from the background for their own goals. While it has many members in different cities, some of which are just regular wealthy people, the group is run by its inner circle, many of whom are indeed powered, and more often than not, they are mutants. This group takes their names after different chess pieces with the black and white kings, queens, bishops, and knights. Now we've already talked about one of them with the white queen Emma Frost, my bae. But there have been many other members and not all of them have been villainous. So specifically we're going to talk about the more evil ones. Names like Sebastian Shaw, Elias Bogan, Blackheart, Tom Cassidy, Mystique, Magneto, Trevor Fitzroy, Norman Osborn, Ezekiel Stane, Jason Wingard, Mountjoy, and Emma Steed have all been part of the HELLFIRE Club. While it isn't really an evil group anymore, with most of the current group made up of heroes, in its prime days of villainy, it absolutely caused problems for the world's heroes. Whoa. Are you subscribed to Top 10 Nerd? I mean, if you're watching this video, I can't imagine there's a reason you shouldn't be. If you like this content, make sure you do subscribe and stay tuned because we put out more videos just like this one every single day.
In at number 7, Galactus and Cosmic Ghost Rider. We know this list is supposed to be the top team-ups you won't believe exist, but I just have to add that this team-up is by far the coolest team-up ever, without a doubt. First of all, you have this possible future where Thanos just completely decimates the Earth, taking out all of the heroes, or so he thought. In comes Frank Castle, who survives and is now fueled by revenge. He cuts a deal with Mephisto to host the Spirit of Vengeance. Although in his hunt for Thanos on Earth, he realizes that the Mad Titan had already left. Then you get the supervillain Galactus arriving to Earth also in search of Thanos after barely making it through their battle. And the two make quite the team. In at number 6, Norman Osborn and the Sentry. This is a team up again that only really occurred out of pure circumstance. When learning about the details, you actually really start to sympathize with the Sentry and his inner struggles. After the final battle of the Secret Invasion, Norman Osborn swooped in, dispatching the Skrull Queen to be viewed as a national hero. Now with this prominent position in the public eye, he was made the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. In this position, he formed what was known as the Dark Avengers. The majority of the team was comprised of villains, with the Sentry being one of the few superheroes who agreed agreed to stay. You see, Norman had convinced Bob Reynolds that he understood his internal battles with the Void. Not only did he show the Sentry compassion, but he promised that he could help him keep control over it. In at number 5, Hank Pym and Ultron. Standing as one of the definitely more unique hero-villain team-ups, Hank Pym viewed his creation of Ultron as one of his greatest regrets, and after the events of Rage of Ultron, both Hank and Ultron had merged with one another. There's actually still a belief that traces of Hank can still be found within Ultron, even though he denied this when confronted by Adam Warlock in Infinity Countdown. This isn't necessarily a team-up for the sake of fighting off a greater force, but rather an attempt by Hank Pym to stop Ultron. Nonetheless, even forced together, the two had to still work with each other from time to time. In at number 4, DEATHLOK and Uncanny X-Force. With the Marvel Universe having so many alternate timelines and possible futures, the one that saw the rise of Deathloks was perhaps the most grim. Many of the Marvel heroes were converted into Deathloks, which became a mandate just like the Superhuman Registration Act. Cut to present day, the Deathloks arrived attempting to steal Phantom X's artificial portable biome, which was called the World. Deathlok Prime was able to overpower these new violent tendencies with logic and reasoning. With his newfound hope, he sought to help Phantom X against his former team. He actually succeeds in protecting the world, and as a result of his good deed, he teams up with the X-Force. Over time, Deathlok established himself as a friend of the X-Men, and even began to lecture at Logan's Jean Grey School.
Number 3, the Cabal. In the last list, we spoke about the group called the Cabal that was formed by Namor the Submariner to combat the multiversal incursions. But for part 2, we're going to talk about the other Cabal. This version of the Cabal was a secret group created alongside the Dark Avengers by Norman Osborn when he became the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., which he renamed to Hammer. This group was basically the villainous version of the Illuminati, and it consisted of some pretty powerful villains. Obviously, we have Norman Osborn himself, who in my opinion is probably the weakest member of the group in terms of raw power, because next to him we had Emma Frost, an Omega-class telepath, the White Queen of the HELLFIRE Club, and sometimes headmistress of Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. We also had Namor the Submariner, who, well, I think he kinda sucks, but he's the king of Atlantis, Loki of Asgard, who was the whole reason the Avengers formed in the first place, the Hood, who was a skilled sorcerer and powerful crime lord, and as the icing on the cake, they had Dr. Doom of Latveria, who really doesn't even need much of an introduction. Taskmaster was also part of this group as well for a little bit, so yes, this team was highly capable. Unfortunately for them, their alliance was tenuous at best, as it usually is with villainous teams. And at number 2 is the Legion of Doom. So we talked about the crime syndicate from the DC universe, but what would be even more compelling than that would be to see how a group of actual Prime Earth DC villains would do against the Avengers. And why not pick the Legion of Doom as that group? The Legion of Doom is made up of probably the most prominent of the Justice League's individual villains. I mean, we've got Lex Luthor founding this team and being backed up by Black Manta, Cheetah, Gorilla Grodd, the Joker, and Sinestro. But that's just the original group. Currently, it consists of Amazo, Black Hand, Brainiac, Captain Boomerang, Captain Cold, Golden Glider, Heatwave, Punchline, Scarecrow, Vandal Savage, and Weather Wizard, plus all the original members who I just mentioned. And it at one point even had Black Adam, Mr. Freeze, and Ra's al Ghul. This team would absolutely crush the Avengers, and that's hard for me to even say because I definitely prefer Marvel over DC. There's just no doubt in my mind. Well, except, of course, if Joker does his usual thing and betrays them, or whatever, or they can't get along, or the heroes have to win because that's just how it goes with comic books. Barring those 3 things, they would crush. Anyways, in for number 1, and for my last trick, I will talk about a group of villains from neither Marvel or DC. No, for our number 1 spot, we're going to talk about the VILTRUM Empire from Image Comics' Invincible series. Again, a loose definition of the word team, but I mean, if you're all from the same planet with the same goal of ensuring the survivability of your race, that's kind of like a team, a very large team. But the Avengers have faced off against entire races of species before, so I don't know. While they have faced off against other races, the Viltrumites, this is a race of absolutely mind-bogglingly strong humanoids who are next to impossible to take down and who just come back stronger after they heal. Just 3 Viltrumites were able to fly through a planet and completely obliterate it. The Grand Regent of the Viltrumites himself, Thrag, was able to tank some of the most powerful of the heroes that the Earth had to offer, and even the strongest of his own race were absolutely terrified of him. I mean, the final climax climactic battle between Invincible and Thrag saw the two going punch for punch inside of our sun, and it still took them a good little while to actually being worn down by that fight. This is a race of Superman-like beings the Avengers would not stand a tiny little chance against.